To Cape Town we go, where the mayor has released the city's fire services report into the blaze that gutted the National Parliament building. For reaction on this, we are now joined on the line by Mmusi Maimane, former MP and One SA movement leader, as well as Dennis Bloom, spokesperson for COPE. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Good to have you with us today here on the Newsfeed PM. Mmusi Maimane, let me begin with you. I mean, you have penned something on this particular matter, but how is it that a national key point can be so poorly maintained? I mean, if you look at the report from the fire department, yes, it is from the fire department, and they are still expecting to get a little bit more details from the expert. But even when you look at the preliminary visual inspection report coming from the Department of Public Works, there is clear lack of maintenance to this building.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to fellow South Africans, and good afternoon to Mr. Bloom. I mean, it's as I wrote extensively even today to state that, in fact, maintenance in Parliament has been progressively in decline for two reasons, really. The first one is that there's actually no one who has been accountable for ensuring that security in Parliament is maintained. Because at one level, some of it is dealt with by the executive, so you find policemen having to respond to the Minister of Police to guard an institution like Parliament. I would argue the case that there must come a time now that we get an independent speaker who is able to procure their very own security services. Otherwise, if you allow the executive to also secure Parliament at a time such as this one, who is exactly accountable? Secondly, it's the fact that the physical maintenance, and this is where budgetary issues have come on board. I've raised this matter to say that ever since I was a member of Parliament, I watched year on year the decline in the provision of services and the protection of the building because of budget cuts. So there was this war that continued between the parliamentary executive and the bureaucrats, as expressed, who are unionized under the House. And the progression of that has meant that the building itself has been left to the state that it's in. So whether we prosecute anyone or not is a secondary matter. What matters in this instance is the fact that indeed Parliament as an institution has been poorly run, poorly managed, has got very limited budget, and ultimately the leadership cannot actually drive the way forward because Nosiviwe, who had done a poor job in the Ministry of Defense, is now deployed to do a job in Parliament, and I'm not sure if she's going to improve. So naturally, I think if you want to rebuild Parliament, it's not just a question of the bricks and mortar. You have to change the way the model is built at this stage.
Dr. Bloom, real reflection. I mean, since 2014 or so, Mmusi Maimane reflecting, saying there's been a steady erosion of the standards. We've allowed political oversight and parliamentary staff to collide. There's been this tension that has been ongoing. What's your view?
Good afternoon, Thabo. Good afternoon, Mr. Maimane and the viewers. Thabo, we are not surprised by this report. We know that we have the ANC government have inherited a solid country. But look at what is happening all over the country. Look at the municipalities, look at the roads, look at everything. This is not surprising, Thabo, that this type of thing. Under the ANC government, everything is collapsing, Thabo. So why must we be surprised with this type of a report? But we are saying, Thabo, to fix this problem, there's only one a solution, that cadre deployment must be kicked out of the window if we want really to save the country, to save our institutions, because it is a total disgrace that you take over from the apartheid government a solid building with everything that was serviced all these years, and now you are taking over and collapsing such a place. But Thabo, we are more interested in who have put fire in the parliament building.
Yeah.
We want to have that report, because we don't want cover-ups here. We want to have and to know the truth, what actually happened there in that building, because it is our building, it is the people's building. So that's why we are saying we want to have that report in front of us.
Yeah. Mr. Maimane, I think you're also reflecting on this. You're saying we should not really just write off the fires just, well, it's negligently, poorly maintained infrastructure. But, of course, this is also quite symbolic of a deeper situation that is going on.
No, absolutely. You know, at the end of the day, international best practice actually empowers whoever the Speaker of Parliament is to do a number of things. The first one is that they move away from political activity. So if you were to look at the British Parliament as an example, the Speaker's seat from their constituency they come from is safe in that sense, so that there's no contestation, so that their ability to execute their duties are free of parliamentary or of political interference. Secondly, the employment of people in Parliament moves away from, if you like, the deployment from a political party. They become institutional people. So when you look at the PFMA, it states quite clearly that the accounting officer for any institution of government is the highest authority. In this instance, I would argue the Secretary to Parliament is that. And I would urge that if you were an employee and the highest employee who had failed to appoint the head of security, who had failed to ensure that the sprinklers are working, I would urge that that Secretary to Parliament must be fired. It cannot be that you live in a country where a national key point can be left in negligence, and then you have no consequence as a result of that. But as I say, to rebuild is going to require that we restructure how Parliament works. Until we get a Speaker who is independent, who can focus on the work of Parliament. When I saw what former Speaker Baleka Mbete and her relationship with the presidency, I knew that Parliament ended up becoming a lapdog to the executive and did nothing else for the people of this country. And so, lastly, I think what is our great worry is that it becomes the same to the point Mr. Bloom is making. Whether you work in a hospital, hospitals were on fire last year, who was held accountable? Whether it's the Lisbon building in Johannesburg, no one is going to be held accountable. Right. Police stations don't work. Ultimately, no one has been held in accountability, and serious evidence has been lost. Next will be our courts, schools, etc. So it is common cause that maintenance of infrastructure in this country is an absolute collapse, and we mustn't be shocked when more of these things are occurring. I am urging that South Africa focuses on how to rebuild itself going forward, and I've made a few number of suggestions as to how we can do that.
Ms. Maimane and Dennis, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us.